And I think, in all the cities, the weather must be great and everybody must be having fun on Sunday after this meeting. And could you please, I would request everybody to switch on their videos if possible so that we can get to see everybody. And yes, we can keep the mute thing on. So last Sunday, 23rd January, we spoke with Mr. Rahul Viparthi and Mr. Amrish J. Kapadia. And I would say that, we really got a very great inputs from both of them. So this is the reason, we really want to continue with doing these sessions. Let's talk so that at least we get to know each other very well. And if by chance we are missing out something with somebody, so we can catch up with that. So for today's session, we have two eminent speakers with us. So we would start with Dr. Abha Nagral. She's the founding trustee of Children's Liver Foundation, and they create awareness about the liver disorders in families of children with liver diseases and also amongst the medical professions. And these do include patients with rare diseases like Wilson disease, PFIC, Gaucher disease, which affects liver. So I would request Dr. Abha Nagral to please come up and tell us about your organization, what all you do, and what kind of experiences you have, so that we get great inputs.
Yeah. Thanks, Sarika. And thanks, Prasanna and ORDI, for inviting me over. I must confess that though I'm on your WhatsApp group, I am not active, and it's very much a dream to be active and to be a part of your organization in a more active manner. So let's hope for the future. But I'm basically a hepatologist, a liver specialist by profession, and years ago, around 2010, is when I came back and we started looking at problems in children. And I realized that most problems, liver problems in children, were actually metabolic or genetic problems and were rare diseases. And that's when my entire interest, there were hardly any pediatric liver specialists in the city of Mumbai at that time. And that's how my interest developed. And then it went on to, I had an interest in Wilson's disease. I joined a support group of patients with Wilson's disease way back. And that's how my interaction with patients and families increased. And I'll just give a small video of our organization for you to get a gist of what it is, and then I'll have some slides. So I'll start off with that video.
Let me ask you a question. If I were to present you my data in the form of this boring Excel spreadsheets and then in the form of...
I'll just try and share my slides now.
नॉर्मल बच्चे खेलते हैं, पर हम ऐसा नहीं करता था, एक ही जगह बैठा रहता था, रोता रहता था ज्यादा, पीला ज्यादा लगने लगता था, उसका पेट बड़ा हो जाता था, वो रो रहा था, वो जो खाना खाता था वो सब वॉमिटिंग कर देता था।
वो मतलब बहुत ही बुरे दिन थे हमारे।
मुझे नहीं पता था एक CLF साइट मुझे राम की जिंदगी बचाने का मौका देगा।
When I came back from my stint abroad to train in liver disorders, we had a lot of children being referred with liver disorders. What I realized as an adult liver specialist was that there was hardly any awareness about liver diseases in children, especially amongst the medical profession. And obviously, that got extrapolated to the general population. It was a completely different spectrum. Their diseases were much more complex. They had many genetic disorders, and the diagnosis of which was not easy. So, the first thing we did was starting case discussions for groups of pediatricians on liver diseases. So, we realized that the need was much bigger and we needed to do it in a more formalized manner.
CLF has also hosted the annual meeting for ISPIGIN in October 2018. We also hold support group meetings at the foundation for various rare diseases like Wilson's disease, Budd-Chiari, Gaucher disease, and patients with thalassemia suffering with hepatitis C.
It was important that the children also and their parents, more importantly, kind of knew more of what their child was suffering from.
डॉक्टर ने डायग्नोसिस किया ये बहुत डिफिकल्ट बीमारी है की इंजेक्शन की कॉस्टिंग करीबन 11 लाख हर महीना है जिसे अभी हम एड मिल रही है एक बंद कमरा रहता है तो उसमें हमें रोशनी ढूंढ रहे थे तो जैसे आभा मैडम थी वो हमारे लिए रोशनी थी
We started helping families financially also. We started collaborating with various organizations. We collaborated with Think Foundation.
What I like most about Children's Liver Foundation is that they don't make you feel that they have done a gratitude kind of thing for you. I'm so thrilled that I'm a partner with Children's Liver Foundation. I have had interactions with them which have been very, very satisfying. In thalassemia, they are dependent on blood transfusions all the time. They are at risk for HIV, hepatitis B, hepatitis C. It's a double attack on the liver. Children's Liver Foundation has been godsend, really. It changed everything. Today, people are confident of saying, yes, I know that I can come out of it.
I've been on transfusion since then. A decade back, I got to know that I'm diagnosed with hepatitis C. So we just had an injection. The cost was around 1 lakh per month. I had to take that injections for 9 months. So just imagine the cost.
We started this whole process of advocacy. There were these new drugs which were available in the Western market and they were horribly expensive. One pill costed $1,000. We also filed an RTI with the government. The entire treatment for 6 months was $300 when the companies in India started manufacturing these drugs. We had a similar advocacy for patients with Wilson's disease.
We are also coming forward with a lot of donation drives, including the conferences, seminars, and then trying to reach out to the maximum well-wishers, those who can support us.
CLF has been very supportive by holding seminars and picnics. It helped us be informed of the latest findings, updates, medical research.
The challenges I faced with this Wilson disease was I had medicines to kill myself. After I realized that this is nothing, just keep smiling, live your life.
The number of phone calls I received, the number of emails seeking help, patients struggling with funds, they feel so helpless. Really like if we have more helping hands.
One big challenge for us is to really help children long term. After the transplant, they require drugs, they require regular blood tests, they may need hospitalization, and really there is no help at that time. That's where I would see Children's Liver Foundation coming in and helping these children beyond the transplant.
Adopt a liver.
So with that...
Human brain has immense potential. Human memory is infinite. On an average, every single day, our brain processes 40 to 50 GB worth of data.
We can read 300 to 700 words per minute. Our brain is designed to learn, read, understand, and memorize about 40 books.
Dr. Abha, you are on mute.
Yeah, I'm just trying to come off this. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, can you hear me now and see my slides?
Yes, we can.
So that was a brief overview of the foundation. And now I'll just go through how we evolved over a period of time and what we do now. So basically, as I said, way back in 2010, we just had a plain meeting with the Indian Academy of Pediatrics to highlight that yes, children were a separate group of patients with liver disorders, and these were very different from what it was in adults. And therefore, we need to create an awareness. And that's when the idea of forming a foundation whose primary aim would be to create awareness amongst the medical professionals first, because there was little awareness amongst the medical professionals also, and then amongst the families of children with liver disease. So, with that background, CLF was formed and registered in 2011. And then we had objectives and aims towards that purpose, uh, helping them, creating awareness, supporting them, collaborating with other organizations, and trying to promote some research. At that point of time, we had not thought of advocacy, and we had not thought of the need for advocacy, and we were not aware probably of the need for advocacy. So some of us got together. Some of our trustees are no more, some very senior people, and at least four of these people here were parents of children. These were people from all walks of society. These were parents of children, as I can see with most of the groups I have been introduced today and otherwise. These were parents of children who had some form of liver disease, which was chronic, and they completely understood the need for having an organization like that. So we started off with our academic activities, collaborating with mainly the Indian Academy of Pediatrics, because we thought pediatricians were the group where these children, to whom these children presented to for the first time, and these were the group of people who needed to be aware that less liver disorders in children were not treatable. Quite a few of them could be diagnosed. And over the last decade, as we've evolved, we've seen that more and more tests are now available, I think, on par to what is available abroad in terms of at least diagnosis of these disorders. And to achieve the same, we had a whole lot of meetings, mainly in the form of case discussions, where we would have PGs present and describe a case, and experts in the field discuss the case, and have a very interactive kind of session with the audience. And we collaborated with various organizations, notably Wilson's Disease Association, which is an international organization of Wilson's based in the US. And Manjeet Singh and Prasanna at that time were part of LSDSS. And so we collaborated with them, had some common meetings. We talked about Think Foundation and various other. Now we hope to collaborate more with ORDI on various issues related to children with liver problems. So this was our first support group meeting in 2012, where we had an interactive session with children and their families of Wilson's disease. And we realized that there was so much which could be conveyed, and so much which could be conveyed effectively when you had a support group meeting. Because it's one thing to sit in a clinic as a doctor and give them 10, 15, 20 minutes and talk about the drugs and the disease, but there were so many small points about diet, about overall care, most importantly about continuing treatment, which often these children, as they grew up in adolescence, would stop treatment. And Wilson's disease, as you may know, is a disease where you have excess copper deposited in the brain and the liver, and they can have liver failure, they can have neurological symptoms related to the brain involvement, and it's a completely treatable disorder. Even if the patient comes in a fairly advanced stage. And therefore, we thought as liver specialists that this was one disease which we should not miss. It is a rare disorder, though amongst the rare disorder, this is something which we see very often. We have now almost more than 300 patients of Wilson's disease, registered and coordinating with us through CLF. We've had several CLF supported Wilson's disease meetings with the families, and it has been a great learning experience, I would say, definitely for patients, but more so for us as medicos, where we have realized we've got a peek into the insight of what ails them and what is it that families want to know from us. The other disorder, which you may have seen a bit in the film, was thalassemia major, another disease which is not uncommon, but I think is classified as a rare disease. You may correct me if I'm wrong. So here we had these patients who have very low hemoglobin because the blood cells get destroyed again for a genetic issue, and they keep need to getting blood transfusions every 15 days, every 3 weeks. And then through these transfusions, they get various viruses, hepatitis B, C, HIV. Now, hepatitis B is very preventable with a vaccine, but hepatitis C is one illness which has got no effective vaccine to date. And it can cause gradual scarring of the liver and causing cirrhosis of the liver, and have also developed hepatocellular cancerous tumors of the liver. So this is a disease which these children can develop because of the repeated transfusions they are getting. So this was in 2014 when we held a support group meeting, and there was a definite aim for this meeting. A drug, I'll just talk about that drug. So this was a meeting where all experts, hematologists, blood bank officials, Think Foundation representatives, and the media and patients of hepatitis C, especially those with thalassemia, attended the meeting. And one of the reasons then was to create awareness about a drug which had been released in the Western market. And I'll talk about it through the story of this child, Ravi, who stood up and related his story during the meeting. So he was an 18-year-old student studying in Standard 12, hailing from a lower middle class family, had been taking transfusions from the age of 4 months. Now, initially, these patients would never survive. Patients of thalassemia major, it was thought to be a fatal disease, and these patients would not survive. Then we had, many organizations like Think Foundation who started centers for blood transfusions in various parts of the city. And at least these patients had access to free transfusions at these centers. And they ensured that there were centers, at least in the city of Mumbai, and it has spread to many cities in Maharashtra, where these centers give free blood transfusions and also provide what is called chelation therapy. So when you give a lot of blood, there's excess iron deposition in various organs, which can be damaging to these vital organs. To get rid of this iron, you need to give chelation. So these patients are struggling with getting transfusions every 2 to 3 weeks. They need these chelating drugs, some of which are injections which have to be taken on a daily basis, which also cost a lot. And then earlier there were these long travels. There was only one center at St. George Hospital at CST in Mumbai where they used to travel all the way to take their transfusion. So life was not easy for these patients. Uh, and then this child develops hepatitis C through the blood transfusion he gets. So to add to the miseries, there was hepatitis C, which, as I mentioned, can progressively damage the liver. Now, this virus lives in the liver for many years and damages the liver. So the family was already struggling with the basic problems with thalassemia major, and now they had to spend 4 lakhs for a treatment which was available then, which was weekly interferon injections, which had many side effects, was expensive, and worse comes, only about 15 to 20% patients actually responded to this drug, which means a majority even did not respond after the expense of the injection and the side effects of the injection. So his family actually lost hope, and they said that, we just can't afford it, so forget about it. But then they hear about this wonder drug called Sovaldi, or the actual drug is Sofosbuvir, from a company called Gilead. At that time, just when we had this meeting, this drug cost $1,000 a pill, it being the first pharma company to come out with this drug. And they said that it had great, more than 90-95% cure rate, as against some 20% which was seen with the earlier injections of interferon. And most importantly, there were hardly any side effects related to these drugs. So that's when, that was the time when we had this meeting, when we had stories about the wonder drug. We read about articles in our journals about how great the response rates were. And we thought, why not, why not try and have this drug here? And with that intent, towards that advocacy. There were many groups, I must say, but we also added on writing to the filing an RTI, writing to the ministers, health ministry, for getting this drug available at low cost. And that did not seem very feasible. And then we had pharma companies come up and say that they could very easily manufacture these drugs in India, and why not? So they had some kind of arrangement with Gilead where they paid some loyalty. But the long and short is that this drug became available to all patients with hepatitis C, including our patients with thalassemia major. So we had these kind of meetings. These are families of patients with thalassemia, where we, encourage them to write to the government. All that all of you have done for your respective diseases, which you are fighting for and talking about. So we did something similar for these patients, and this was probably through just our evolving experience with patient interaction, our first initiative towards advocacy. So we kind of put pressure on the government with various other groups to ask the pharma to make these drugs in India. And they said that the cost actually to make the drug was minuscule, and they were capable of this. Of course, there was this big criticism that generics will not be as effective as the parent compound. And there was this whole feeling, and it still exists with a lot of people in the medical profession, that the original multinational drugs are the most effective and the best. And therefore, so there was this little doubt in people's minds that, okay, the pharma companies in India would make this drug, but would it be effective? Would a generic, which is so cheap, which now costs, as I said, so from $1,000 to a pill, so you took about 13 to 3 for 3 months. So 90 pills, which is $90,000. I mean, I can't even think of the amount, but that cost $300, to put it in a nutshell, when the drug was available in India. So this drug did become available, and at a minuscule cost to the original drug. But the question was that, is it effective? And that was a big question in everybody's mind. So we went on to actually do some collaboration with various foundations or various societies related to thalassemia, and collect some data on hepatitis C. If you may be aware that hepatitis C is one test which is done whenever a blood transfusion is given or blood is collected from a donor for transfusion. Now, it was seen that before this virus was discovered in 1990, but it took almost a decade for the Indian blood banks to start testing for this virus in all the blood. So the mandatory testing started in 2000, 2001, before which the blood transfusions which were given were not tested for hepatitis C. And we looked at various parts of India and we found that if you look at the average, prior to the mandatory testing, around 22% of patients with thalassemia major had hepatitis C. It's a huge percentage, which came down to around 13% after the mandatory testing. Of course, I'm not going to why, despite testing after 2000, they were still getting hepatitis C. There are many reasons for that, but I'm not going to that. But there was a significant drop after the testing, but they still were coming on with fresh infections. So we said, let's try out these generic drugs and let's publish it in peer-reviewed journals for the world to recognize the value of these generic drugs. And we did publish this article and we found a 95% efficacy of the generic medications in these patients. So that was one thing. And this, of course, the foundation funded the treatment of all these patients. To date, we have funded the treatment of more than 200 patients for hepatitis C treatment, including those with thalassemia. And of course, this was a reason to rejoice for all these children. We had a small party at Imagica and they were thrilled because all these children, in fact, except one child, all the children we have treated with thalassemia and hepatitis C were cured of hepatitis C. So we continued our support group meetings for various disorders which affected children. One was Budd-Chiari syndrome, where you have the blood flow, outflow from the liver completely blocked because the blood is what we call thrombophilic or thick and is prone to clotting in various vessels. We had one, you're all familiar with Gaucher disease, and we had this session with them. We have been trying to help children at a personal level in doing their basic investigations and all. Of course, you know what is happening at the national level, much more as far as advocacy and other initiatives by various governments, including Karnataka government, towards getting the medications free for these drugs. And the problem with some of these LSDs is that the drugs are extremely expensive. So this was a bigger challenge, I would say, and is a bigger challenge for those fighting for the availability of drugs for this subgroup of patients. We also have a very active website where we announce our meetings, where we, all the meetings which I told you we had, academic meetings, we put the presentations and videos on this site. It's called childrenliverindia.org if you want to check it out. And also there is a fair amount of material for patients and doctors to access, and support group meetings are it. And we put in journal updates on the liver disorders every month. And then started our journey for Wilson's disease advocacy. Now, sometime in 2016, Wilson's disease, as I told you, is something is close to our heart, and probably we've done the most in this disorder, this rare disorder. This is in 2016, where the main drug which most of our patients on, which is D-penicillamine, suddenly went out of the market. And we realized that the reason for this was that the pharma companies thought that they were getting the API, or the active pharmaceutical ingredient, as they call it, from China. And this ingredient had to be imported, and they did not find it cost effective to make this drug because the number of patients were relatively small. So it was not a very profitable proposition. So suddenly the import was stopped and this drug was out of the market. And that is when we lost a few of our patients, because this is a drug which needs to be taken lifelong. So there was some had stock with them. What they did was they started combining it with other basic drugs which were not as effective, or they patients themselves reduced the dosage so that they could last, the drug could last longer. But there were some who had no stocks with them. And unfortunately, we lost some of our patients to acute liver failure because of sudden stopping of this drug, which was otherwise freely available. And that's when we started kind of investigating as to what exactly what happened. And this is what I told you, that pharma companies did not find it cost effective. We wrote to various organizations, including the health ministry, saying that one, that we needed to have this drug available, that the government will need to force the pharma company to get the drug, because otherwise patients were dying. And there was what happened in the meantime was there was an alternative drug called triantine, which is a drug which is more often used in the West. Now, this drug we selectively use for patients of Wilson's who are basically not able to tolerate penicillamine, because this drug is available, or was available rather, only in the gray market at the cost of about 1.5 lakhs a month. And then the availability also was very erratic. It would be available sometime, not available. So these patients who could not tolerate deep penicillamine had to be at the mercy of the availability of this drug in the gray market at a huge cost again. And again, as I said, one had to continue this drug lifelong. So there were two things which we wrote. One is, why was penicillamine suddenly out of the market? And two, why could triantine, which was actually in the market, Western market since the 80s, why was that drug not being made in India? So these were the two things which we started writing about and fighting about. And finally, we could get a company. So we also started simultaneously talking to the farmer. So at one level, we were talking to the government, and at the other level, we were talking to the farmer as to what was the big deal about making this drug, having experienced hepatitis C drugs. We said, why not ask pharma whether they can make triantine? And again, it was almost like a Sherlock Holmes detective work, where we realized, to our great surprise, that the active pharmaceutical ingredient of triantine was actually manufactured in a place in Hyderabad, and it was being exported to the foreign companies who were making the drug at huge cost and then sending it back in the gray market to our country. So that was quite a revelation. And we said, if the API is being made in India, there are no patent issues because this drug has been available in the West since 80s. Why is it that we cannot make it available to our patients in India? And so that was one issue. And we started again talking to the pharma companies to make this drug in India. And sure enough, and again, we had the same argument that this drug was used even and in an even lesser number of patients than penicillamine, because it was used only for those patients who did not tolerate penicillamine. That how would it be cost effective for that handful of patients through the country to make this drug? So again, there we said that you could export this drug at a lower cost, because patients in the West were having a major problem now, because the company which made this drug triantine had hiked up their rates in the West also, and patients were finding it difficult even to get it through the insurance. So through this efforts, convincing the companies, we had a company who in 2019 made this drug, started manufacturing this drug in India commercially, and this drug became available for patients in India. So this was another attempt to get a drug available. So this is the name of triantine in the West. Look at the cost here. 22,212 for 100 capsules. This is a 1-month treatment. This now in India is available for 15,000 rupees. Which at that time was in the gray market for 1.5 lakh when the penicillamine went out of stock. So what I'm trying to say is that this is one route we have realized which is effective, and which could be used in the future for other drugs also which are not available in the country. And this, though triantine still costs 10 times the cost of penicillamine. Penicillamine is 1,500 a month. This is 15,000, but it is way below what was being available, and it is regular. The supplies are regular, and we get it on a regular basis. And of course, we do make it a point to always celebrate these events with the families and the patients. It just really helps us to bond, and we use this opportunity when we go out with them to get all the people who are treating these patients to see them. We see them in a different role, and we see them much happier, uh, and they'll just come to me and say, Dr. Auntie, ये बताओ मैं ये खा सकता हूँ क्या, मैं ये कर सकता हूँ क्या. The parents feel much freer. They are interacting with each other and exchanging so many notes. So this is, we find, a very, very effective way of communicating with patients and reaching out to them. So uh, talking about the other thing which I am very much involved with, and that is liver transplantation. So, 1 in 4 Indians have a liver disease at some stage in their life. And right now, I would say, of course, this is not, it is in a way a genetic condition, fatty liver disease. It runs in families, it is genetically acquired as part of what we call the metabolic syndrome, and is becoming the #1 cause of liver disease in India. Though it's not a rare disease, it's anything but a rare disease. But just to say that some of these diseases, though curable, do need a transplant eventually. And the rough estimate is about 10,000 children need a liver transplant annually, and many of these have rare disorders because, as I pointed out right in the beginning, children with liver disorders often have genetic rare disorders. So we thought, what is it that we can do? Now, to get a transplant is anywhere from 15 to 25. There are hardly any public sector government hospitals performing transplants. And a transplant really transforms the life of a very sick patient who, right from birth, is visiting the hospital. And these children have done very well, got married, gone back to school, pursued medicine as their career. So we have these success stories of various children. You saw Ram in the beginning in the video. This is Ram when he was born, needed a feeding tube, could not eat, and has been doing very well. I don't have a very recent picture of his, but he got transplanted from liver, part of a liver given by his aunt. This is a girl who was one of her first few transplants. Look at her. We've taken permission to show the pictures. Look at her with really bad malnourished state, 11 months, and now a college girl, 10 years after transplant, leading a perfectly normal life. So I would like to say that we have taken some initiatives. Of course, there's much more left to be done in this area. That public hospitals need to offer transplants. There's a vast majority that cannot afford these. There's a need for cutting costs again and funding these patients. And there's a lot of, I mean, it's one of the things in when I saw the rare disease policy of this government, that a lot is being relied upon through crowdfunding. And we've used crowdfunding a lot, but there are problems with crowdfunding, as you must have realized. One is that crowdfunding comes for a one-point treatment. So, especially for children, uh, almost, I would say, 80% of our children manage to get the entire cost of transplants through crowdfunding and in a very short period of time. But the problem starts after that there is nobody, because I think it's not as attractive or glamorous area for people to give money for. There's nobody to give any post-transplant care or funds for post-transplant care. And that is the problem with crowdfunding as we see it. And of course, we are also trying to create an awareness on organ donation. So I'd like to conclude by saying that all desire better healthcare and access. The state and healthcare industry have their limitations and conflict of interest. But I think what we've realized through this decade of being involved with patients, that finally it is patients' families who will be consistent in their push for change. And that is what we see in organizations like ORDI. And I would say that the Indian pharma has the capability of making all drugs. And I think at advocacy, of course, at all levels, we should also aim for getting the pharma to do something more for all our rare disorders. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rava. And it was really very insightful. And the kind of work you are doing, and, the success stories, of course, it gives a lot of, I would say, the confidence. And now I would invite Dr. Suresh Hangawadi. Okay, hello sir. And he's the professor, Department of Pathology, Medical College in Devangiri, and he's the founder president of Karnataka Hemophilia Society Devangiri, and involved in developing hemophilia care services. So, sir, could you please give your insight on the kind of work you do and your organization, and how you want everybody to have a look on the kind of work you are doing?
Thank you. First, I would like to thank ORDI for organizing these kind of talks, so that we can be introduced to the uh, public as well as professionals, and including the government, so that all of us coming together to bring changes in the life of these patients. To introduce myself briefly, I am also suffering with hemophilia. I have factor 9 deficiency, and I know the pain of these patients since it is lifelong. And those days when I was born with this disorder, when nothing was available, it was very hard for me to come up. But anyhow, with the efforts of my parents, God's blessings, so I made it possible. But I determined to become a doctor, and later preferring the laboratory medicine because of my inherent problems, and involving in the field of bleeding disorders community to bring change in the lives of my blood brothers. So just I would like to enlighten about how bleeding generally stops in healthy individuals. So these are the components of hemostasis, our blood vessels, platelets, and certain clotting proteins and fibrinolytic mechanism. When there is an injury to the blood vessel, the immediate action is vasoconstriction to reduce the blood flow to that part. But unfortunately, it is a transient process, and hence it cannot help much. But by that time, the platelets, tiny particles in our blood, they rush and make a plug to arrest the bleeding. But unfortunately, as blood vessel, vascular function is transient, the platelets plug, whichever we call primary hemostasis, is a very friable mass. So that can be peeled off by the flow of blood in larger blood vessels. So that's why the next step we need is the coagulation. This coagulation, to understand the coagulation, there are about 13 clotting proteins in our plasma part of the blood. And these 13 clotting proteins act in a cascade. And if cascade, and ultimately leading to the formation of a thick substance we call fibrin. This is the normal. This will take place within 4-5 minutes and stop the bleed. Whereas in patients with the various bleeding disorder, problem could be at the blood vessel, like vitamin C, scurvy, or problem could be at the platelets, maybe quantitative or qualitative disorders. And in hemophilia, these two functions are normal, but the strengthening of the platelet plug will not occur, because the 13 among the 13 clotting protein, any one clotting protein in between is deficient, and hence the cascade will not continue. And if it is not continued, there is no fibrin. And if there is no fibrin, there is no strength to the platelet plug, which is firm. Hence, patient bleeds continuously but slow. The characteristic feature of clotting disorder is the bleeding is prolonged, slow, and sustained because of their normal platelet function. And most commonly, factor 8 is the one deficient, and followed by factor 9 deficiency. And factor 8 is known as hemophilia A or classical hemophilia. and factor 9 deficiency is known as hemophilia B or Christmas disease, which I am having. And as I told you, these are the common coagulation factor deficiency, but there are rare factor among the 13, even factor 10 deficiency patients are there, 11 deficiency are there, 7 is there, 5 is there, and the functional platelet disorders are also there. So there are very rare. One most important I would like to highlight about these three bleeding disorder. These two are characteristically seen predominantly among males. So the whereas the Van Willebrand's disease, this is the common bleeding disorder among women. Fortunately, hemophilia is not so common among women, whereas Van Willebrand's is common among women, and that's why they suffer a lot, especially their monthly cycles. So another thing is as all these disorders are genetic, but with different mode of inheritance. As I told you, hemophilia is X-linked recessive disorder. That's why the males are predominantly affected, whereas females they may become carriers, but not all women in the family of hemophilia need not be carriers. So we have to test them and we have to offer them prenatal diagnosis, the genetic counseling. And this is, I will not go into the details of all this. And yes, what are the manifestations of hemophilia? Manifestations is the prolonged bleeding, which I told even from the external cut or whatever external injuries. But most important and which causes morbidity is bleeding in internal structures. Most commonly weight-bearing joints. So they can bleed in any part of the body, but most common is weight-bearing joints. And if bleeding occurs in the vital structures like brain or abdomen, it may be a fatal. And since it is genetic, it is incurable, but temporarily manageable. The management is the replacement of their deficient clotting protein at every instance of bleeding. Again, there are two types of products available. The pool of plasma and extracting the particular factor and marketing it in the for the treatment. Whereas nowadays recombinant technology is also available, and because of this we have these recombinant factor concentrates. But in India, it is the scenario is really serious because these medicines are not manufactured in India. Most of them are imported. Recently, one or two are there, but the still we have to depend upon the imported medicines, and hence most of our patients either not treated or undertreated. Hence, the bleeding, big repeated bleeds, and the damage to the joint we cannot prevent. They become disabled by the time of adolescence. And that's why the challenges what I would like to emphasize for the sake of awareness, because these are all low volume, high cost disorder and low level of awareness, lack of support. So that's why we have started creating awareness about the public, medical professionals, training, and all the programs. We have a strategy for this. And since it is incurable, it is lifelong disorder, need long-term support. And especially these, it is not just treating a patient in a family. The whole family has to be rehabilitated. The whole family needs maybe economical support, maybe genetic counseling, maybe a lot of issues are there. We have to address them. And specialized attention towards identification, diagnosis, treatment, and rehabilitation. And management of hemophilia is comprehensive. It is not just one profession can treat. So we have to arrange the complete, the comprehensive care services under one roof. And strong, concerted, constant, and consistent advocacy efforts by our hemophilia federation and chapters is going on. And one more thing I would like to emphasize is disability in hemophilia. So earlier, hemophilia was not included under the RPDA Act. Okay, because it is hidden disability, our disability in blood. So that's why it took nearly more than 1 or 2 decades to make understand government about our problem and include under RPDA 2016. And another thing is in hemophilia, yes, they become disabled, but it is preventable disability. It is a progressive disability. So if you treat, if you don't allow them to bleed, by providing time the prophylactic treatment, absolutely the hemophilics can, you can prevent the disability among hemophilia. And that's why preventable disability means the prophylaxis is the only way where we need to advocate with the government so that we can prevent disability among these. Instead of giving facilities after becoming disabled, it is better to prevent them because quality of life is more important. And that's why we advocated. Fortunately, hemophilia, thalassemia, sickle cell disease are included under Disability Act, but it is not helping us in a greater way, especially the job opportunities. And these are given only those who are included under benchmark disability. And also the hemophilia, the diagnosis also, the inclusion, some criteria has to be amended. And employment reservation especially has to be made available for hemophilics. And our chapters all over the country, especially Prem Chowdhury from our Jodhpur chapter is very much on this advocacy effort. All of us, we are trying our level best to convince the government to make the employment reservation available. And coming to, so the federal, the Karnataka Hemophilia Society, because it is to my heart, and I have founded this organization 32 years back with a clear vision that hemophilia without disability and children free of pain. And we are working with our mother organization, Hemophilia Federation India. And I was also president of National Hemophilia Federation on 2 terms. And our mission is reaching out to people with hemophilia. There are about more than 1 lakh, 25% of hemophilia population of the world lives in this part. But unfortunately, their identification, registration, and providing support is just around 25%. And providing total care also, educating, training, rehabilitation, involving government and other organizations, and research and prevention of hemophilia. So our organization, as any other NGO, registered, and we are working as a team to achieve all these goals. So this is just I will run through. Started in my home and later moved to a rented house with a daycare center. And one more thing I'm very proud and happy to share with you. We Dr. S.P. Balasubramaniam, he was our is our patron, and during his lifetime, 21 years of his association with our society has helped us a lot to mobilize funds and establish a state-of-art health. And even other celebrities, Amsaleka and this thing. And we received an international award in 2014 by World Federation of Hemophilia. And support, yes, we are working with government, district hospitals, and we are working with various other disability organizations and to bring change in the hemophilia. So these are some achievements in the over the last thing. As I told you, with the support of a local philanthropic woman, Miss Srimati Kirwadi Girjamma, she donated a piece of land on which we have established the comprehensive hemophilia care center with the diagnostic lab, basic coagulation profile, physiotherapy rehabilitation, including hydrotherapy, daycare transfusion ward, inpatient with 10 beds, an outpatient consultation room, reception, and all the lifeline blood bank. And why we established blood bank? It is not exclusively for hemophilia. So there are other rare bleeding disorders like factor 10 deficiency, factor 13 deficiency, platelet disorder. For all these patients, I am very happy to share with you, we provide all these blood and blood components totally free of cost to all these inherited bleeding disorder. And recently, we have started the mobile hemophilia care service unit with the collaboration of Rotary Foundation in the local Rotary Foundation. And this is just a recent launch of mobile service unit, because we have seen a lot of our inherited bleeding disorder patients with life-threatening bleed like brain bleed. So they succumb on the way. And that's why in the 100-kilometer area, so we want to provide this mobile service unit for these patients. So as soon as they sense, we have educated all these patients to sense the earliest sign of bleed, so that if they have this kind of bleed, immediately they will contact to the mobile service unit, and they will not come to the center. Our mobile service unit will rush to their home and give the medicine first, stop the bleed, and bring them in the same van to the center for further management. So this is our plan. This year we have launched it. And in addition, other awareness programs, voluntary blood donation camps, motivational programs, all these are ongoing. Again, still challenges, though government is involved providing these medicines at district hospital, but sometimes there are a lot of crises. So all the 12 months factors are not available in government hospitals. That time, I must thank our World Federation of Hemophilia. Under humanitarian aid program, we get these medicines so that our patients in KHS Davangere get totally free of cost treatment services, physiotherapy, or even including 3 meals are given free of cost. Except we are finding difficulty in providing diagnostic services because the reagents are expensive, and we are giving at nominal cost the diagnostic services. Otherwise, all services, including blood and blood components, physiotherapy service, counseling service, everything is free. And another thing is around 15 to 20% of patients, they develop antibodies to the factor they receive. We call inhibitors. And management of inhibitors is very challenging, very complex. And these medicines are still more very expensive beyond the reach of common man. And when government factors are not available, it is very, very difficult for us. And resource mobilization has become a routine, challenge for us. And sustainability of services, whatever the services we have established, we have to sustain also. And research and development, especially in the prevention, by giving them genetic counseling. And one more thing I'm very happy to share with you. I must acknowledge the support of my students, present students, old students. There are so many over the last 25 years. I've earned so many students who come in support of these services, and especially recently, one of my old student has come forward to offer the hemato-oncology services. Because of his assurance, we have expanded services to other blood disorders like leukemia or other bone marrow disorder. Every month, 2 Sundays, we conduct clinic, and this is our humble beginning. And after 6 months, so let us review this and upgrade with further services. I must also happy and proud to share with you Mr. Prasanna Shirol, my very old, long time friend, who is with us. He is in fact on our advisory board. We all together, and we are part of ORDI. We conduct, we conduct a race for 7. And this year, yes, I appeal the public, our especially youths, so they come forward and involve on 27, 7 o'clock and 7 kilometer, whether it is on your cycle or even just walking, make a video and upload in the social network and help us in creating awareness about all these rare diseases and draw the attention of government for the care. I thank once again the ORDI and our team. Our team always be on their toe to involve in these services. I am really proud to share with you all. Thank you once again for your opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Suresh. It was really good. And I think a lot of questions has been answered by Dr. Abha Nagral. And if there are few questions from Dr. Suresh, so you can please ask, like whosoever wants to have some doubts. Or in fact, Dr. Suresh, when Dr. Abha Nagral has just mentioned that, she is not quite happy with the crowdfunding thing from the government, what we have been offered in the rare disease policy. So what are your comments on this thing? So that, when we are together today, so let us have our take on this also.
Yeah. Actually, on some occasions, I've discussed with the Prasanna also regarding this crowdfunding. Yes, we were excited, but later we found some challenges there also. Even the perception, even today morning, there is one in TV9. There is they have collected nearly 9 crore for the treatment of some patients, and I feel all of us we should go for crowdfunding, but with all the prepared mind and team approach, and also the accountability. That is very, very important. Especially, we need to be very accountable and transparent to the public, so that some more, the fundraising initiatives will come up in the future.
Can I comment on that?
Yes, please.
I think, crowdfunding, of course, has helped a lot of our patients. So one can't deny the benefit of crowdfunding. But I think as far as the government rare disease policy is concerned, they are kind of, what should be their responsibility is being transferred to the crowdfunders. They are absolving themselves of all the responsibility. They are just saying that let the money come through crowdfunding. And what happens to most rare diseases, some of them of course are a one-time treatment, but majority are a lifelong treatment. And I see that as a major problem with, as Prasanna was suggesting, that we use BPL for the transplants and use crowdfunding for the supportive care. Now, if that supportive care was within a time frame, one could use that. But the moment you tell your donors that you need money for lifelong care of a patient, it's not coming through. And I don't know what happens in the rare disorders also when you have patients who need lifelong therapy. How does the crowdfunding work there? So that's a big question mark.
Doctor, actually for smaller amount of supportive care, we raised cumulatively for 4 years, 5 years and kept it as a funding, and which is utilized every month. It is not about on monthly. Immediately we cannot go and ask for a lifelong because nobody will come forward.
Yeah.
But at least for saying that treatment cost for 3 years or 5 years, which lump sum of 5 or 10 lakh rupees, and somewhere we have to park within our organization and then allocate it to the patients by purchasing the medicine. I think that is one solution which we have tried out.
So Prasanna, there you have to be constantly, so the 3 years are over. Now we need to plan for next 3 years. So one way we have thought of is approach donors and say you adopt a patient, So for that patient, that donor is going to manage his or her lifelong therapy. I think that just logistically works better for us and for the patient. And also the donor feels that, okay, I have adopted this child, so I will look after whatever it needs, whether it's investigations, hospitalization, whatever, drugs. I will do everything which is needed for this child. So we've come around to that. of helping these children, because we've had many children with BPL status who've got crowdfunding completely within a matter of 10 days, 15 lakhs raised for the transplant. But the problems have started later. They are on immunosuppressive drugs and no money to get into the hospital after they get an infection. And that becomes very frustrating. So yes, we're trying to work around the system and get some funding, but that is a challenge, definitely.
Here, actually, yes, the such lifelong disorder patients need lifelong support. That is, but BPL category patients also we understand. So whatever, whether BPL or APL, the lifelong suffering is not that easy by the parents to manage. So what I feel. As an organization, not as a patient, this thing, as an organization, there should be a structured approach raising funds. And also, we should also counsel the patients' families to understand the practical issue, because what I tell, shared responsibility has to be emphasized. It is not just everything should be donated for the treatment of the patients. So not like that for their child. So at least around 10%, whatever it may be, some percentage of commitment from the family, from the community, and all of us together, only we will be able to manage. Otherwise, it is very difficult. Whenever we get a patients with Gaucher's disease, so at least those patients who are in the metropolitan cities, they are accessible to various this thing. I am working in Davangere, our medical college. I become totally helpless when a Gaucher patient comes, even for the diagnosis, and we can do a bone marrow and may give the report. But in that way, of course, Prasanna is in touch with us, but it is not that easy, and we have to be in a team, and approach also should be comprehensive and structured. Thank you.
So is there any other question? And one more point was there in my mind while, both the doctors were sharing their things. So even the pharma companies, Indian pharma companies, so even they are doing good work now, what we expected them to do before only. But it's really good that, at least they are working now, and we have few pharma companies which are giving us medicine, support, food, and everything. So yes, it's an appreciative work, I would say, on their part.
Yeah.
So is there any questions? Vikas ji, yeah.
मेरा क्वेश्चन नहीं है, मेरा सजेशन है. मैंने पिछली बार भी दोनों स्पीकर्स को सुना, अभी भी मैंने दोनों स्पीकर्स को बहुत ही ध्यान से सुना. तो हमारी जो सबसे पहली मैं इसको जो डिस्क्राइब करना चाहता हूँ कि हम एक अभिमन्यु की तरह एक चक्रव्यूह में घुस तो गए हैं, हमें अब मालूम नहीं है कि इसमें से निकलना कैसे, क्योंकि समस्याएं या प्रॉब्लम्स हर सपोर्ट ग्रुप की कॉमन है कि पेरेंट्स को सही डायग्नोस देना, उन बच्चों को या पेरेंट्स को सही डायग्नोस देना, उसके बाद में उन्हें सही ट्रीटमेंट उपलब्ध करवाना. बहुत पॉसिबिलिटी है कि जैसा आप बता रहे हैं कि कई डिसऑर्डर्स का वन टाइम ट्रीटमेंट है और ज्यादातर डिसऑर्डर्स जो है वो लाइफ लॉन्ग है. तो मैं चाहूंगा ORDI से कि मैं अपील करना चाहूंगा कि हमें कुछ ऐसा करना पड़ेगा कि जो मेरा सबसे पहला सवाल इसमें यह है कि हम जो बार बार जो 7,000 डिजीज 70 मिलियन पेशेंट की बात कर रहे हैं, उसकी बजाय हम लोग बात करें कि कितनी डिजीज ट्रीटेबल हैं, उससे गवर्नमेंट को इम्पैक्ट ज्यादा पड़ेगा. फॉर एग्जांपल, जितना मैं जानता हूं, मैं बहुत ज्यादा नहीं जानता हूं, लेकिन जितना भी मैं जानता हूं कि अराउंड 300 to 350 डिजीज ट्रीटेबल है. तो हमें गवर्नमेंट को सबसे पहले ये डॉक्टर्स को बताना पड़ेगा कि ये डिजीज ट्रीटेबल है. जैसा अभी बताया गया कि जो लीवर फाउंडेशन की तरफ से बताया गया या हीमोफीलिया की तरफ से बताया गया कि ये डिजीज तो ट्रीटेबल है, वो ₹1 रोज में भी हो सकती हैं और वो ₹1,000 रोज में भी हो सकती हैं. और दूसरा मैं ORDI को बोलना चाहूंगा कि जो मेडिकल इंश्योरेंस है, जो जेनेटिक इंश्योरेंस है, उसका कैंपेन बहुत ही अच्छे तरीके से चलाया जाए कि प्रेगनेंसी के वक्त ही अगर उसमें जेनेटिक डिसऑर्डर चला जाए, कि अगर बच्चा सो कॉल्ड रेयर डिसऑर्डर्स या जेनेटिक डिसऑर्डर्स से सफर होता है तो उसका इंश्योरेंस उस पेरेंट को या उस बच्चे को मिलेगा। तो शायद हम इस चक्रव्यूह से निकल सकते हैं, क्योंकि जिस तरह की रेयर डिजीज पॉलिसी बनी है, मैं बहुत टेक्निकल पर्सन नहीं हूं, लेकिन जितना मैंने उस रेयर डिजीज पॉलिसी को, वो दिखने में तो बहुत अच्छी सी दिख रही है। जैसे गवर्नमेंट ने हमें लॉन्ग टर्म के लिए क्राउड फंडिंग पे छोड़ दिया है, तो क्राउड फंडिंग तो मैं समझता हूँ पहले से भी थी और पेरेंट्स पहले भी उसका उपयोग कर रहे थे। अब गवर्नमेंट ने भी हमको उसी ट्रैक पे डाल दिया है कि अगर कोई ट्रीटमेंट है तो आप क्राउड फंडिंग कर लीजिए। तो मेरा अभी भी मानना यह है कि अगर हम सही ढंग से कैंपेन करें और छोटे छोटे डिसऑर्डर्स को लेकर गवर्नमेंट को कन्वे करें कि ये डिसऑर्डर देखिए कितने अच्छे से ट्रीट हो रहे हैं, तो शायद कहीं ना कहीं हम बेहतर तरीके से अपने कैंपेन को चला सकते हैं। नहीं तो इस वक्त तो हम लोग उलझ से गए हैं, चाहे गवर्नमेंट की तरफ से हो चाहे खुद अपनी तरफ से हो, कि हमें खुद को पता नहीं है कि आगे पेरेंट्स को सपोर्ट कैसे करना है। जैसा अभी डॉक्टर आभा बता रही थी कि लीवर ट्रांसप्लांट भी अगर हो जाता है, उसके बाद में जो मेडिसिन के लिए जो लॉन्ग टर्म केयर है या सपोर्टिव केयर है, उसमें भी हम पेरेंट्स लोग या चिल्ड्रन लोग उलझ जाते हैं। तो शायद कहीं ना कहीं मेडिकल इंश्योरेंस या जेनेटिक इंश्योरेंस हमारे को सपोर्ट कर सकता है। मेरा सजेशन है ये।
बहुत अच्छा सजेशन है विकास जी। और इनका सब हम मतलब ये जो मीटिंग का जो पर्पस है, जो हम ये हर संडे करना चाह रहे हैं, इसका पर्पस भी ये है कि हम सबके मन में एज पीएजी लीडर्स जो जो भावनाएं हैं, जो किंतु परंतु जो भी है हमारे दिमाग में, और हम जो सोचते हैं विजन रखते हैं फ्यूचर पॉपुलेशन, फ्यूचर जनरेशन के लिए, वो हम सब डिस्कस करें और आपस में मिलजुल के जो भी एक सोल्यूशन, एक रास्ता, एक भाव की तरीके से आगे बढ़ते चले जाएं। तो यही रीजन है कि हम हर संडे मिलें और बात करें। तो आई थिंक नाउ वी कैन so I would like to tell you that
may I add something?
Yes, yes. Yes,
I'm
Manjeet.
Manjeet here. Huh?
Yes, yes.
So thank you very much. I heard you all patiently, and it was a nice discussions. And now coming to the rare disease policy and the crowdfunding issue, you know, this subject has been creeping for last more than 1 year, and essentially speaking, more than 3 to 4 years. The diseases which have a one-time cure or diseases which have a lifetime cure, it's a Herculean task for all of us. But I must tell you that on 17th June 2021, the then Health Minister Harsh woke up from his long sleep and called 55 corporates on a virtual call and encouraged them to come forward to donate for the rare disease funds under the CSR Act of the income tax. That meeting was attended by prominent doctors, Dr. Madhulika Kabra, Dr. Mamta Muranjan, and many more. Sadly, on 27 June, the then health minister was ousted by PM government for reasons known to them. Some doctors have the minutes of that meeting also. I am not having, otherwise I would have shared with you all. And for last 1 year, after the policy has been enacted, and in Delhi High Court, the combined cases of rare disease are going on. And in that hearings, the Solicitor General tried to just prolong the issue on one pretext to other things, wherein we have, even the ORDI also may have written to ministry that there should be mandatory contribution to the CSR for rare diseases, because these corporates are waiting for the clear rules and guidelines from the ministry to take the benefit of funding to the rare diseases. Because the Schedule 7 of the CSR Act does not include it. And despite the court orders, despite the writing to the ministry is not having a conscience to come forward. These corporates have a unlimited funds to give to the, and these people promised Harshvardhan that we will do it, but they are waiting for the clear guidelines from the Ministry of Corporate Affairs on the mandatory funding so that they get benefit also. So my request to all these organizations is, let us continue to write this new guy, health minister, is not very much, aware or of these rare diseases or what has been happening. And in every date they said we'll do this, we'll do this. But let us keep writing to Ministry of Corporate Affairs, Health Ministry, and Ministry of Finance. And joint letter from ORDI can also go, wherein we should emphasize for corporate funding to the rare diseases. I gave you example of my 4 patients' families. There are 2 siblings of MPS 2, mucopolysaccharidosis Hunter syndrome. They have started crowdfunding on their own. They are also party in the Delhi High Court. So they fixed a target of 5 crore rupees. And I am sad or glad to say, in last 4 months, they have been able to garner only rupees 1 crore, which will be sufficient only for 1 year, less than 1 year, treatment for both these siblings. Similarly, 2 Gaucher patients from Punjab have also started the crowdfunding on with my support, and those poor guys have been able to garner only 5 lakh rupees. So I think I am able to tell you something very simply. The government has no conscience to give a single penny. They have promised in court that they have carved out and created 25 crore rupees for rare disease fund in March 21, but that fund still has not come to any of the center of excellences. So this is my submission. I hope you people agree or don't agree, but we should continue to keep on knocking the doors of these, dump and people, because they don't understand, because they don't have emotions attached to these raids. Thank you.
Now, on next Sunday, that is 6th February, we would be introducing Mr. Alok Bhattacharya and Dr. Anubha Mahajan. So we will be with them and having their insight on the work they are doing and the kind of approach they would want us to and everybody us to lead on. And I would say that this was a nice session today, very eventful session. And Prasanna ji, if you would like to say something.
No, nothing else. Already we have exceeded our time. Just thanks to all the participants and especially the speakers who have given us and enlightened about their work. Especially Dr. Abha talking about new drug development and bringing the cost. I think that should be an eye opener for all of us to work on individual diseases, individual PAGs, because there is still a lot of scope where each PAG can impact for their own group, because they know better and they know what is the situation of the drug. They can interact. And yes, a second part on the policy issue, yes, we will definitely take it forward. Just to say that, our state, yesterday somebody from ministry called up saying that there is a patient who is not under a...
We can't see you and hear you. Swami,
are not able to hear you, Prasanna.
Swami, can you please check? Oh, there is no power, Prasanna ji is saying. So okay, so we can meet on next Sunday. And thanks a lot to both the eminent speakers.
Thank
you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a lovely Sunday, please. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.